This is the Insider's Guide to Real Estate. I'm your host, Victor Normand, and today we go inside home remodeling. My guest is a general contractor who specializes in remodeling projects. His name is Brian Griffin from M&M Home Services. Please join me in welcoming Brian to our show. Brian, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. All right, so we're going to talk about home remodeling. We've had designers and home stagers and others on the program before talking about the latest features and the sequencing of projects and so on, but we've not ever talked to somebody who actually has to carry out these plans until today. Right. So before we get into what a remodeling project is all about and really get inside it, let's talk about Brian Griffin and M&M Home Services, the history of the company.
Sure. So we're a small firm located in Acton, well, technically Boxborough, Massachusetts, but we do a lot of work in Acton, Boxborough, Concord, surrounding areas. We consist of 3 to 4 guys, depending on the season, how much work we have going on, things like that. We've been in business for about 2 years. Before that, I did a lot of remodeling, home flipping, things like that. But at this point, we're now M&M Home Services.
Okay, great. So you've seen it all in the past 2 years, I'm sure. So first of all, let's get into what a homeowner should be looking for when they're hiring somebody to do some work in their house. So what would be your advice to a homeowner when they're trying to find a contractor?
Well, I think, I've got to say number one is referrals. To know that someone's performed well in the past, for another homeowner is key. Make sure the quality of the work is there. Timeliness as best as can be is there. Make sure that the client's needs are met. As you have these referrals, they can help guide you in terms of,
sure,
okay, this guy's good, oh, this guy's shaky, that kind of thing.
All right.
So yeah.
All right, so let's say someone it doesn't have the benefit of a referral, somebody who's just moved into the area. What questions should they be asking you as a contractor?
Well, they should make sure, first of all, they're licensed. They have the proper insurance, they have workmen's compensation insurance, they have liability insurance. Pictures, from other jobs that they did. And maybe, the contractor can give them a list of people that look, that, here are these 3 people, I just did the bathroom or kitchen for them. Call them up and, they'll be sure to tell you how I did.
All right, so what is the license? What exactly is the license that a contractor needs to have?
So it needs to be a CSL license, okay?
And
that's
CSL?
a contractor supervisor's license.
Okay.
And typically for most home renovations, you're going to want to see it's an unrestricted license. So it has, that contractor can do anything from masonry to framing to drywall to, cabinet installation, windows, things like that. Those are really the things you want to see that they have that particular license.
Okay, and insurance, so what kind of insurance are you?
So workmen's compensation insurance, if they have employees, is required. That's one thing. And then general liability insurance as well.
Okay, and these are documents that a contractor can produce
Absolutely.
and show to a homeowner, and you really should look for them.
Absolutely.
You've mentioned referrals. Why is it important for a homeowner to do their due diligence up front? What are the kinds of things that can go wrong with a relationship between a contractor and a homeowner?
Well, obviously trust is huge in this industry, and if you have someone in front of you that you can trust, or at least someone else has vouched for them that they're trustworthy, that's huge, because a contractor may come in the beginning of the stages and say, hey, you can do this, 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 and promise this, but they may not be able to. And to know that they can deliver on these things is very important.
All right. So if I have a contract or an agreement to do the work, as a homeowner, does that protect me?
Yes. In the state of Mass, for anything over $1,000, you're supposed to have a written contract. The contract will have a number of items in there that will help protect you. One is performance, and the contractor actually has to perform these duties, and then at that point the homeowner will pay them. In such a sense, it's a little more detailed, but they want to be covered that the contractor won't just walk away with the money and go to other jobs and disappear for a few months. And hopefully come back.
Okay, well, you talk about money. What's the reasonable expectation? If a contractor starts a job, is it a remodeling? Would it be expected that they'd get payment up front for some of the work?
So that's a tough question because you know, a lot of my business is based on trust with my clients as well, and a lot of my clients I've known for a long time, so I trust them. Sometimes I ask for money up front, maybe 25%, maybe 50%, depending on what the materials are. If it's a job that's very heavy on materials, where 60% of the job is materials, I'm going to ask for a good amount up front. If it's a job that's more labor and smaller materials, I may not ask for anything up front and maybe just sign a contract. So it depends on the level of comfort I have with the homeowner, the homeowner has with me, in terms of how much I ask for.
Okay. Yeah. So if you have a situation where unfortunately you just don't know the contractor doesn't really know the homeowner, if you're asking me for money up front to buy materials, how do I know that you're going to spend that money on materials? I know that that's no way to start a job off, but,
yeah,
but just to be sure.
I think, you know, they're going to provide you, for the most part, we're going to provide you with an estimate. And the estimate's going to show typically a breakdown of materials and labor. And you can, you know, kind of guesstimate from that, okay, his materials are $10,000. He's probably going to ask for $5,000 or $10,000 up front, you know, or a portion of it thereof to get the job started. Because he has to go buy the materials and put the money out front for it. So he needs to have that money ready for it. So that's kind of how you can gauge it.
Okay. So I'm going to see those materials arrive on site, and I'm going to make the assumption that you paid for them. But let's say I'm really skeptical, and I want to be sure that you did actually take the money that I advanced to you and paid for the materials. How can I be sure that that has happened?
Well, you could certainly ask for verification from wherever they bought it from, some sort of a receipt or some, you know, a lot of times we'll go to local lumber yards and they'll know exactly what's going on. So.
All right, so there's a way to verify that.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that the job progresses and you've reached a point where it's half done, and now you're looking, the contract says you get paid for more, that's pretty typical?
Yeah, in the contract we usually outline when we get paid. So maybe upon first rough inspection we get 33%, and upon, you know, another phase, whether it be final inspection or whatever, they get another 33%, and then upon, you know, final completion we get the remainder. So we'll break it down usually depending on what the job is.
Okay,
yeah.
So a situation where contractor, modeling contractor comes up to the homeowner and says, look, I'm only half done and you've paid me based on the schedule, but I need to make my payroll. I'm short, to be honest, I'm short on cash. Can you advance me? How do you deal with that?
That's a tough one. You know, a contract is a contract, so you try to stick to it. You know, we try to keep money in reserve always to do our payroll, pay our bills. But like anything, sometimes we have 3 jobs going on and we have, you know, $40,000 of materials out all of a sudden, and you're all of a sudden saying, well, where's my payroll money? So it doesn't typically happen as long as you're managing your money pretty well.
Right.
But I don't want to say be wary of it, but you know.
It could happen legitimately, but it also could be a red flag that the contractor.
It could be. I think you're going to understand by that point of the project, you're going to have a good idea of your contractor and
okay.
what he or she may, you know,
okay.
provide for you.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's say you're into the project. The project has the demolition is completed, some of the work has begun, okay. And the homeowner begins to feel like this contractor's not showing up when they should, yep. Beginning to feel like this contractor's not going to finish the job. How would you, if I called you and said, Brian, I'm in this situation, what would you advise me?
Well, communication is huge, because there are times when we're just running around fighting fires, and unfortunately that, you know, sometimes other fires are more important than other things, and sometimes homeowners don't understand that. And when I mean a fire, we might have to stay ahead of a plumber on another job to keep them going, or an electrician. So those things do happen. Communication is huge. If the contractor calls you in the morning and says, look, this is what's going on, I need 2 days, you know, it's just the way scheduling worked out, that's okay. But if it starts to drag on further and further and further, depending on the severity of your project, if you're right in the middle of a bathroom renovation and the contractor leaves for 2 weeks, depending on where they are, if it's one thing if they're waiting for, you know, templating for this and installation from plumbers and electricians, things like that. If we're waiting for those 2 weeks for that thing to happen and our work's pretty much complete, that's one thing. But if we have the wall still torn open and nothing's getting done, yeah, you might want to start to
the red flag
put the screws to us and say,
right.
Get out here.
Okay, all right, so then, this scenario, I was right. The contractor has just disappeared, not returning my phone calls.
Yep.
I hear stories that they've left town, and I've got a half-done job. And I call Brian Griffin, and I say, Brian, I've heard you're a good contractor. I don't know you, you don't know me, but I've got a job half done. Can you help me out? Well, how do you deal with that?
So that happens. It's happened once or twice to me, not necessarily in the same situation, but I have taken over jobs. We usually come in and take over the permit and provide an estimate and just do what we would normally, but hopefully we're a little further in the project to help the homeowner out. So maybe the demo's been done for us, so we don't have to budget for that. So we'll come in and just kind of pick up where the pieces left off.
Okay. Now, is there any concern on your part that some of the work that the other contractor did that's
Absolutely.
may not have been done correctly?
Yeah, we obviously would prefer to come in before the walls are closed back up to see what's going on. If the walls have been closed up, typically we'll put a disclaimer in our contract saying, this was done before us, we have no control over this, but we'll continue from here for you.
Right,
So,
but if you said to a homeowner that you'd like to open up a wall just to verify something, that wouldn't be out of line to
no,
do
if
that.
we see any indication that there's a need to have that happen, then yeah, we would do that.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so now we've talked about situations where the contractor has been problematic, and jobs haven't run as smoothly as possible. But sometimes the problem is not on the contractor side, it's on the homeowner side. So let's take a situation where, again, it's a new client, someone you've not done business with, and you don't know them, they don't know you other than your reputation and your references. And you're meeting them for the first time at their home. What kinds of things that they might do or say would be red flags to you?
I'm not sure if anything's really red flagged me other than, one thing that we look at when we go into a home is the age of the home. And if we walk in and it's a very old home, we have to kind of prepare the homeowner to say, look, there's a chance that we have to go back 10 steps to go forward one here. And what I mean by that is older construction is different. Once you open something up, you got to bring it back to code, and you never know what you're going to find on an old house in terms of how it was framed or if joists were cut into or studs were cut into. So those are the kind of red flags that I look at when I get there. In terms of a homeowner themselves, red flags, I guess if I hear the word the last contractor did this or this, then you wonder, okay, it's probably the contractor, but was it the homeowner? But usually it's the contractor.
Yeah, okay, but right. But it could be a situation where the client is just a difficult client to deal with. They're out there.
They are out there. It's sometimes hard to read on the first meeting. I think it's really just managing their expectations.
Okay. All right, so budget must come up early on in the conversation. Yep. So that could be a red flag when someone tells you they've got a budget of $20,000 and they want to redo the entire kitchen and new appliances, and you intuitively, without even getting into the details, you have first impression, you have a good idea of the scope of the project and how much it's likely to cost. So that could be a red flag, I would expect.
It could be. Typically the homeowner, well, I shouldn't say typically, most of the time the homeowner won't give you their budget up front. They kind of want to see what you have to put out there first. When they do come up with a budget, we always try to meet it, but then there's unrealistic expectations too, where you're not going to get the highest end appliances
Sure.
and high end cabinets for $20,000 in a kitchen.
Yeah. So if I as a homeowner, my fear that if I tell you I have $20,000 to spend, then you're going to make the project cost $20,000. But how realistic is that?
We try not to. We try to be fair. I always try to be fair with clients. Obviously, my estimate is my estimate. I mean, this is what I think it's going to cost me to put this together, and I try not to look at the budget if this is the number you give me. If it's an unreasonable number, then if it's an unreasonably low number, I'm going to probably hit it, no problem. If it's a high number, we can kind of gauge it. We can say, okay, look, this is what it's going to cost me to put these appliances and these fixtures in and this tile, this floor. You have a couple $1,000s left. Do you want to go higher here? Do you want to go less? What do you want to do?
Okay. All right, so it's not, a homeowner's not necessarily tipping their hand by telling you what their budget is. I mean, it's...
Not for me.
No.
Not for me. I try to make my prices consistent across the board. So.
Now, would this be a red flag where you walk into a house and you notice it's a very nice house, everything's high end in the house,
Yeah.
but they've been to a big box store and they've put their budget together based on, you know, what we'll call contractor grade, and you have a strong suspicion that they're not going to be satisfied with that. So how do you deal with that?
Yes, we, you know, definitely we look around at the house. How much details in the house? Is there crown molding? Is there fluted trim everywhere? What's around? Is it Wolf appliances? All those kind of things we take into account. And if they want to get the bargain basement, range, and we might say, that doesn't really fit with this. You want to go a little higher on that. You want to, maybe get a different budget, and we'll go with these type of appliances.
Okay.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
So you have a good sense of, what different grades of cabinets, appliances, floor coverings, and so on. And
for the most part.
And that enters into the discussion early on, because you don't want to get into a situation where you have a mental image of the project, and the homeowners have another, and they don't jive. You need to get that out early on.
Yeah, that's where, say maybe a designer comes into play, in that case, and maybe they can help bring myself and the homeowner together in terms of what we're going to put together. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now you've had this initial conversation with the homeowner, and you've had a meeting of the minds, and you're comfortable that you can deliver what they're expecting at the price that they're expecting. What other things do you need to disclose to them right up front?
Well, we have to obviously tell them that we've got to go through a permitting process. That's one of them, which involves multiple inspections. We have to, any sort of pre-work, we have to discuss how we're going to do the project, our schedule, our estimated time frame, things like, a dumpster on the site, where's it going to go, what's the time frame for that, subcontractors, when they're going to come in, how long they're going to take, those kind of things.
Okay.
That's kind of one of our initial conversations once we actually get the job and we're starting to move forward with it.
Okay. I have some experience remodeling, and I've certainly talked to a lot of people who've done that, and I think I can honestly say I've not run across anyone yet that has done a remodeling project where it's come in on budget and on time. What's your experience?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's somehow more than not, it's how it goes. We're budget-wise, you open up a wall, you might find something, then you go back a few steps, it costs more money. A homeowner may all of a sudden get into the project and say, I want this instead of this, and it might be 20% more. In terms of scheduling, we're always trying to keep on schedule the best we can. But like I said, we're trying to fight the fires when we have to fight fires. So we might have 3 guys on the site one day, 2 on another, and gone a day, and back for a couple days. And then we have subcontractors, their schedules to deal with. If we find something that pushes us back a day and then pushes them back a day, they may not be available that day. They might have to come back 2 days later. So all of a sudden, one day becomes 2 days, becomes a week.
So if somebody gives you a call right after Labor Day, and they said, we want to remodel our kitchen, and we'd like to have it done by Thanksgiving, how's that going to work?
It's pretty tough. Certainly it can be done if all the stars align. If your design's in place and you know what you're ordering and you know right then and there what you want to do, that's a different story. But if we're starting from scratch, you got to think of design and flow and styles and colors and all that stuff.
So typically, it's not going to happen that way.
Not by Thanksgiving.
And so you're better off dealing with that up front. And you might want to start your kitchen remodeling project after the holidays.
Yeah, I definitely recommend after. January, February is usually the best time to find a contractor. So that's not a good time.
Yeah. Well, what if you interview a couple and you notice that the wife is many months pregnant and they want to do a remodeling job? That might also be a red flag too.
Yes, we do. I do discuss that because the day you come home from the hospital with a baby you do not want to come into a kitchen full of dust and half open. So yeah.
So you've got to be alert to the environment, and flag unrealistic expectations up front.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go back to something you mentioned, plans. More and more customers now are working from a set of plans rather than just ad-libbing a remodeling project.
Yes.
So who are they engaging typically to put plans together?
So typically it's a designer that deals with kitchens, baths, and whatever the project is. And the designers are good because they add a lot of value. They can get sometimes the materials for a discounted price, and that's kind of how they make some of their money. So they're usually not a huge cost add to the project. So they can bring a lot of benefit in terms of they know all the styles and the appliances, and they know them in and out. And they're good at putting colors together and tile together, countertops together. They're good at putting it all together, and as well as fixtures.
Sure.
So it's a good start to the project.
Yeah, you may have some homeowners that really do have good design sense and good color schemes, but most of us, we recognize something that's done well when we see it, but how do you get there is a challenge.
Yeah, and that's where, again, a designer can come in and do a 3D plan of the kitchen or bath and can kind of show that to the homeowner. It's very visual. They can see exactly, not exactly, but very close to how it's going to look when it's finished.
Right.
So
you're talking about a kitchen designer or a bath designer that's really going to take an existing kitchen space and provide their expertise and recommendations. Sure. Now, if someone comes along and they want to start moving walls and things of that sort, is that the point to perhaps bring in an architect to be sure it can be done that way? Yeah,
I mean, the designer will typically say, hey, let's open up this wall, and then they'll kind of stop there and say, okay, well, let's get the either architect or structural engineer in to put in the proper structural support to get that wall where they want it. So,
okay. Yeah. Now let's I'm sure you watch HGTV and you see a lot of remodeling projects. Yeah. How realistic are those projects?
Very unrealistic.
No, in what way?
I think it's just, I don't know, the fact that they can do a whole kitchen in a weekend it just baffles me. I think they really, they must have huge crews that come in there first of all, and I have a hard time it's filmed over 3 days.
Yeah, it is.
I have a hard time believing that.
Yeah, but they do make those representations, and it really is misleading when they'll do a major renovation of a house and they'll say, we'll get this done in 6 weeks, and it could take 6 weeks to get the permits to do that work.
Yeah, if it's a big project, if it's a big scope, it could take several weeks to get the permits, and depending how busy the local town is, they might be 3 weeks out before they can even look at the permit, the application. So I think there's a lot of prep work for those shows that happen. Obviously, that's behind the scenes that you don't see. And then they fill the kitchen with, or the house with, 70 people, 70 workers and get it done. And, unfortunately, we don't have the capacity to do that.
No, and
most of us.
Right, and it's unrealistic for a homeowner to be dealing with, a full-service contractor who has a big staff to do a project like that.
Yeah, it's hard to maintain a large staff like that, and if you do, it's going to usually be a little more expensive at that point.
Sure, sure. Now, what about many of these projects on TV? The homeowner actually participates in the construction. How realistic is that?
Maybe a little bit. It depends. A lot of the people on TV have a separate full-time job they have to go to, so they put a hole in the wall in the morning, and then they go to work and come back and do something, and the camera shows that for the half the show. So I think it happens. There are we have some clients that like to help out a little bit here and there, and that's okay to a point, depending on the customer.
Yeah, yeah. But as a practical matter, on HGTV, you often see the homeowner involved in the demolition. They give them a sledgehammer, and they do that kind of work, or hauling the old cabinets out to the dumpster. But in terms of any of the skilled trades that are involved, that's not too realistic. Not
too often. I definitely have some clients that are good with their hands and can do things. So no doubt, if a client wants to do a few things that I've had comfort with in the past, things that involve closing up walls, things like that. That's all we have to do. That we have to keep an eye on that. We have to make sure it's done to code. But if a homeowner wants to prepare a little thing on the side or something, then
we try to accommodate.
We try to help them out.
That's good.
Make them feel good about it.
Okay, Brian. Let's now. One thing that often happens on a job that causes delays that would be good to explain right here is like you as a contractor, you may have several projects going at the same
Yeah.
time. And often, and I've been guilty of this, and I suspect most homeowners have, when you have a contractor in your house working in the kitchen, but you've really wanted a shelf in the mudroom, and maybe the tile in the foyer replaced, they start adding to the job. I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
probably pretty common.
Yes.
So there's a complication there. On the one hand, you want to accommodate. You're on site, and it's expanding the project, so
Yep.
it's good for you too. But it has an effect on other projects that you're doing. So you're trying to keep a project on schedule in another house, and also accommodate your current clients. That happens frequently, I suspect.
It happens almost every job.
Really?
It's the words "while you're here" are very common,
Yeah.
and it's it's beneficial in terms of it's efficient. While we have this tool out to go do this, but if it's something small, we try to accommodate it. If it's a large project that we have to treat separately, we'll have to just do that. And it's hard because I want to help people out and I want to get things done for them and I want to take care of them. But if it's a big other project and we have a project scheduled for
Right.
a week later, we might
Right.
have to say no. We'll come back for that.
So you like
It's
to
hard.
keep everybody happy, but sometimes that's just
Right.
not possible.
Right. Exactly.
All right, so then also you have a situation where things change. Someone makes not an insignificant change to a project. They want to move the sink instead of in front of this window, we want to put it in front of that window.
Sure.
And so that for the homeowner, that doesn't seem like at this stage of the project a big change, but it has an impact on your subcontractors.
Yeah, sure, and it really depends on the stage we're at. If we've already put cabinets in and the sink's in, and you want to move the sink, obviously that's a big deal. If we've already got a rough plumbing done and you want to move the sink, it might be a little easier then maybe, but depending on where we are, it could be a small headache or a big headache. Yeah.
Yeah, so you've got your schedule
Mhm.
for this job, for other jobs, and then you rely on subcontractors, and they have their schedules too.
Sure.
And they don't always share those schedules with you.
No.
So that you expect them on a job on a certain day, and they're reliable, and they come that day. But if you call them up the night before and say, I'm not ready for you tomorrow,
Yeah.
that could have major implications on progress.
Yeah, we definitely try to, first thing we hear about something getting changed, we think, okay, who is it going to impact? And, we try to get the electricians and plumbers notified as soon as possible so that they can plan their next day or 2 days later to fill in that gap
Right.
where we all of a sudden we don't need them. So we try to really anticipate the impact of the changes as soon as possible.
So it's good, just going back to where we started from, it's good to sensitize, if you will, the homeowner in some of these subtleties that do affect cost and schedule and project. Sure. And you're trying to accommodate and having them some understanding of your challenges is an important thing.
It is.
All right.
It is, yep, absolutely.
So Brian, this has been very informative. Thanks
Great, thank you
so
for having
much for coming by. And that's our show for today. Thanks for watching.